Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Arn. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer himself, the founder of the Four Horsemen, the creator of the Spine Buster. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Double A. He is the enforcer. He's Arn Anderson. Arn, how are you, man?
Good afternoon, good morning, good everything. I'm fine. Mostly wanted to hear a little bit about your vacation. How are you? Are you rested?
I'm rested. I'm glad to be back. I appreciate Paul doing double duty for us and giving me a few days off. But unfortunately, I came back to a whodunit, Arn.
Wait a minute. What do you mean?
This
is not good. When you say that, it's not good.
Our friends, and I do say our friends because you know both of these fellers, Cassio Kid, the stand-up comedian and morning show host, and my best friend of a decade or more, and your pal, he looks up to you. It's hero worship at this point. Dave Silva, both independently of each other, asked if they could come swim in my pool while I was out of town. And of course I said yes. And then when I came home, I was rewarded with a shit on the floor. One of them shit on my floor, Arn.
Okay, listen, I'm gullible and, wing a lot of times, but on the first flyby, I'm not buying that.
Well, we have evidence. Megan in her real life does medical research. She collected the stool. We ran some DNA tests. There's lawyers involved. There'll be lie detectors. We're playing it out on what happened when with Tony Schiavone, but this is a real story. Megan and I came home to a 7-day baked on turd in our cabana bathroom down by the pool. So it's a situation, man. They were 6 inches shy of a toilet that has a washlet on it, which means if you sit on that toilet and press a button, it'll clean you up. It'll spray a fragrance. It's even got a dryer in there. It'll dry you off. You don't have to do anything. Just sit there and it'll do the rest. They didn't do that. They opted for a, what I call a floor plop, and they left a mess. By the way, the shower was pristine. There's a steam shower in there. It's crystal clear glass. They didn't even bother to shower up after they took a floor plop.
Okay. First of all, Megan had you collect the specimen.
No, I didn't know about it. Megan stomped upstairs and said, "Who's been in our house?" And I said, baby, they texted you. Who? Cassio, Judy, Dave, Heather, brother, and sister. They came and swam while we were out of town. Yeah, but who else? Nobody. We got cameras and stuff. So, I checked the camera. I got footage. I know when people are coming and go. So that's it. And she said, well, one of them shit on the floor. And I thought she was kidding. But I could tell. You've probably seen Megan mad in her day. She was serious. This is real. There was a shoot shit on the floor.
When there's things like that and it's a woman's home.
Yeah.
I'm guilty. I'm older. My pressure is not what it used to be. I have dribbled a few times, a few drops.
Everybody's dribbled.
in the toilet, not necessarily right in the toilet, maybe in front of it a couple of inches and, something. And it gets heat. And I can only imagine, every now and then Smokey, our Pomeranian, will drop one and that gets heat.
Yep.
Because he knows to go outside. He knows to let us know. But now this sounds like there were no animals in the house, right?
Oh no, there were, if they brought their own, but our pets were boarded. So we don't, by the way, I know a Dave Silva turd versus my little 5-pound poodle's turd. Those look a little different.
Dave, I'm trying to give you an out here. Casio, I'm trying to help you out here, brother, because it is kind of preposterous.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, that would happen. This is not a rib. You don't rib your boss. Wrong guy to rib, especially your friend who's your boss.
You know what? I just realized I really am in the wrestling business now. Somebody pulled a shit rib on me.
They did.
You're
all the way in.
I mean,
however, I would suggest stupid on the choice.
Yeah.
Rib the boys all you want. Don't rib the boss. You know why? In the words of the Iron Sheik, or he'd take it out of the check.
Well, we're not going to be taking it out of the check today. We're talking about all things Mid-Atlantic wrestling. Of course, last week you and Paul did a nice little watch along, and now we're going to pick it up where we left off. April of 85. You and I ran through March of 85, but you're going to start April of 85 on April 2nd in Spartanburg, South Carolina at the Memorial Auditorium. It's a TV taping for Worldwide, and they ran a little promotion there where the first 500 fans in attendance received a free t-shirt. And you probably needed one of those because you're working double duty here. You're going to team with Buddy Landell to take on Sam Houston and Denny Brown. Of course, you guys are on the A side of that one. But then there's a dark match with you and Manny Fernandez. And man, you and Manny, y'all were heating up in a hurry.
Yeah, and the thing about that dark match, it served a lot of purposes. You could announce it to the public as something that they could be sure they were going to get. In those days, they got it, and it would be considered a main event. Me just getting there, getting put in that spot, from a positioning standpoint, it made you look like, okay, they are going to go with this guy. And, Manny and I clicked pretty quickly, and that became a thing for a while.
Yeah, for a while indeed. The next day, you're in Raleigh at the Dorton Arena, and once again, working with Manny, you pick up the win there. The following day, you're off, a rare off day. But on April 5th, you're once again working with Manny Fernandez, this time to a no contest in Columbia, South Carolina. You're at the Township Auditorium. We've spoken a little bit about Dorton Arena and how much I love the arena and how cool it looks, but Tony Schiavone just said it was hot and it was a dump and it was miserable. Did you have any favorite buildings in the CROCKETT territory? A building in particular where you just knew, I like the town, I like the arena, I like the people, I like the accommodations? Any of that stick out?
Well, the easy go-tos were the ones that were close, Charlotte, obviously, Greensboro, all those that were close. Columbia was one that I favored because of the way it was built. It was one of those arenas that, it was like built almost straight up, like the seats in the upper deck were like almost over the ring. And that was a cool environment. Loved Richmond because, that was a big arena geared for big shows and held a lot of people, a lot of great buildings. Acoustics were always a good thing. If you were in an arena that had some really good acoustics and everything sounded loud and, because the noise goes straight up, there was a slight delay. So when it was a full, it was just a funky atmosphere. But some of in those days, especially when we first got there, business was not the best yet. So they would opt to go to smaller arenas, especially for television. And for me, I like to sweat anyway. I'm a sweater. I'm one of those guys that loves to sweat when I want to sweat, but I can't stand it when I don't. I bet you're one of those guys.
Oh, yeah.
So, being on that TV and having a good sweat going, it was just conducive. And I think the fans even, for those towns, once they got a sweat and they looked around and realized they were soaked, then, hey, what are you going to do about it? Let's just go ahead and have a good time. So it made for a great atmosphere.
I get it. It's a wrestling podcast, but he's saving us money on our mortgage. You really trust this process? The reviews don't lie. 5-star review after 5-star review. We make it fast, we make it easy, and it's no cost or obligation. Give us a shot to earn your business. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did, especially if you like keeping more of your own money. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket, so what are you waiting for? Hurry to savewithconrad.com. I want to mention TV the next day, April 6th. You're at the WTBS studios, and it's interesting because this is the very first episode that is promoted by Jim Crockett Promotions. So as a reminder, wrestling has been on TBS for a long time, but April 6th, 1985, this is the first time it's a Jim Crockett show. How big of a deal was that?
Oh, God, it was huge. Because the reality is, when we did our syndicated show, it went to a lot of places. And syndication is always good. But anybody that had been in the business over a minute knew that 6:05 on Saturday to 8:05 was prime time real estate.
Yep.
If you're going out, okay, you haven't left yet. If you're staying home, you're at home. It's just a nice chunk of time that people, if you stayed and watched the entire 6 to 8, you didn't miss anything. It was still early enough to go out. So it was a perfect spot.
Tony, Ole Anderson is the Ole Anderson with the Minnesota Wrecking Crew. That man means trouble.
You're exactly right. He looked at Arn Anderson. He said, that's the way the Andersons should be. My goodness, David. Who knows what's going to happen to the National Tag Team Champions?
Listen to the music. The music is the man. And the man is the Raging Bull. He's in that ring right now against an Anderson. Arn Anderson. This is the match.
It's probably, David, the hottest feud in professional wrestling right now between these two men, because earlier had a chance to look at when Arn Anderson broke the arm of a wrestler. Manny Fernandez, the Raging Bull, jumped in the ring to help him, and then Arn Anderson got on the Raging Bull, and then it's just ballooned from there. And when you first look at Arn Anderson, he and Ole look an awful lot alike. That's the first thing Ole said when we looked at Arn Anderson in action together with me.
Looks like his shadow.
Yeah, he said it looks exactly like me, no doubt about it. But these two are tough men, and speaking of Ole Anderson, David, Ole Anderson has joined us once again here at ringside.
Well, I came down to see, as people say, what it's like to watch kin, what it's like to watch blood in the ring, and that's why I'm here watching Arn.
Ole, we talked about Arn and you resembling each other. It's really uncanny.
I don't think there should be anything uncanny about brothers resembling each other.
Brothers? Your father and his father being brothers, is that what you mean?
What I'm more concerned about is watching Arn Anderson he wrestles. What I'm more concerned is about this feud that they're talking about between Arn Anderson and the Raging Bull. Somebody made some comments about what happened last week, and I stick to it. I say the Raging Bull stuck his nose in some place. He certainly is a doctor. He isn't qualified to come down there and inspect anybody. And right now we're going to see probably one of the greatest matches of all time.
All right, so we have the two men in that ring. They're ready. They can compete against each other. Right now, the Raging Bull having that headlock, applying that pressure on Arn Anderson. Both men respecting the other's ability.
David, you are the big stars in the NWA, the Major Leagues of Professional Wrestling, and of course here on the Superstation. Jim Crockett Promotions always brings you the very best in professional wrestling, the NWA.
There you see him. He still has that headlock. They are, both men, trying to figure out, trying to jockey for position. Feel each other out. They don't know.
Yeah, here now, David, look. Arn Anderson, when the man's tied up in the rope, a big blow to the side of the head.
Legal forearm. That's a legal forearm, though. I take him. Switch now. By the ball. The ball catches him.
Ole Anderson still with us here at ringside, and I mean concentrating on this match. What about what's gone on so far here, Ole?
Well, you made a comment about Raging Bull being in the ropes. He wasn't in the ropes. Everything is legal, and I think David at least caught it. Maybe he's got a little more experience than you do. He made the comment that it was a legal move, and as far as I'm concerned, and the referee, I'm sure, concurs, it was a legal move. Right now, you know, Arn just needs to get that adrenaline pumping, and Mr. Bull, Raging Bull, is going to have a little bit of a problem.
Right. Back of the hand by the Raging Bull. He's working on that leg. You got to remember now. Arn Anderson, his power comes from his legs, his mobility. You cut that out. That's what the Bull is doing. Right, he's working on that leg.
Still working on Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson down on the mat. The Raging Bull working on the leg. And there you see Ole Anderson intently watching this match. And, of course, when Ole and I earlier got a chance to see Arn Anderson, it was on pre-recorded tape. Ole in the studio with us here today. And, I mean, these two men, a lot of animosity between each other. Now, David working on the leg. Still working on that leg with that big elbow, with that big knee.
He started with the upper part of the body. He started with that headlock. Try to cut the blood supply off to the head. Now he's going to the leg. One of the support. You work on that leg. If you injure it, you can't move as fast. Yeah, hard down on that leg. That's what it's doing. That's what he's doing. This is for all the marbles.
Oh, my, David. Again, a big blow.
Back of the hand. It was an open hand. Staying with that leg. Anderson trying to figure out how to get out of it. Again. Sort of slaps him.
Slaps him right back again. Arn Anderson trying to get out of this. This move applied by the Raging Bull. And once again, the big knee goes down on the side of the knee of Arn Anderson. Look here now, David.
Now look at him. Puts that elbow into that knee. Rubbing it back and forth. All right, what can he do? You know, I see Ole standing over here just trying. Ole knows he has the experience. Ole has that experience. His mind is going 100 miles an hour. Trying to, if you could just tell him what to do. All right, now, our right-handed in, puts him across into the rope. Manny goes right after that leg again. Good move. Control of the mat.
David, look here. On the leg. We've seen this move many times.
Oh, yeah. He's going to bend it back. Yeah.
Once again, back goes the leg of Arn Anderson. David, this has been an exciting first hour of World Championship Wrestling.
Oh, yes,
we have another exciting hour to follow. We'll stay with this match. If it would happen to end, you would not miss any of it. We have another hour of World Championship Wrestling coming up. Stay right with us.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're right back. Welcome to that second hour of World Championship Wrestling. This match has been going on. Manny Fernandez still has that leg.
Still down on that leg, David. They're working on that leg for a good 10 minutes. Ole Anderson still here with us, and so far the Raging Bull doing quite well working on that leg, Ole.
Well, one thing that I see right here is that Arn Anderson has apparently just got a lot of people concerned. He's trying to uphold some of the things that you talked about, being nice, so to speak, and maybe taking it easy too much. Right here, he's got to go after this guy. He's got to be an Anderson. He's got to be aggressive, just like he is. That's the way an Anderson wins.
He rammed Manny into that post.
And David, I don't know if many of our viewers can hear Ole Anderson, but he's working almost as a cheerleader over here for Arn Anderson.
He's yelling to him to work on him. Look at him. Hey, he's picking up.
And as if responding to Ole Anderson, Arn Anderson taking control of the match.
It's like he's getting psyched up. Ole Anderson's helping him. He's psyching him up. You know, we always talk about the fan support. The fan right now for Arn Anderson, Ole Anderson. Nope.
Still working on the arm, and what a trademark of the Anderson family, working on the arm, David. You know as well as anybody, and that's exactly what Arn Anderson is doing.
Take one part of the body, work on it until it's immobile, and then make him submit. That's what he's doing right now with Manny Fernandez.
David, both men have been in this match for a long time. They're both worn down right now, very tired.
Good job.
Let's see who can come out ahead.
Knee across that arm. Arm bar.
No. Ask him, referee. I'm doing it.
Arn Anderson wanting Tommy Young to ask the Raging Bull, but the Raging Bull not ready to give yet. Boy, the tide of battle is really turned here in just a few moments. It was the Raging Bull working on the leg, and now Arn Anderson on the arm. Ole Anderson still here.
Right, listen to it. Forearm now. Whip him across. Hear that turban? Caught him with that foot.
Probably can hear Ole Anderson. He's really getting involved in this match.
Oh, he's facing up and down.
Don't let it go. No.
Ole wanting him to stay on the arm.
Back to that arm bar. That's what he's doing. I think he's listening. That's the sound that Arn Anderson's picking up, is the sound of Ole Anderson's voice. Ole.
Now the fans getting behind the Raging Bull, wanting him to get a rally going right here.
Man, he's down. He's trying to figure out what to do. Anderson's got it. Watch it. Drop that knee right across the arm. Got that pressure. Pulling at it. Can he do it?
I tell you, it makes me feel like it's a couple of years ago, like when Gene and I were in there, when we were going for all the marbles, when we were world champions. Right now, you see a kid who's got more potential than anybody in the whole wide world. You're looking at Arn Anderson. You're looking at an Anderson. David, I don't have to tell you what an Anderson is like.
That's correct.
Come on!
You saw it, Manny tried to use that elbow. He landed right on it.
Hey, work on that thing. Don't hang
Boy, Ole Anderson is livid here at ringside.
He's coming unglued.
He is livid here at ringside watching Arn Anderson, and he was right. Ole Anderson says the guy has a world of potential. There's no doubt about it. Arn Anderson certainly does.
He is an Anderson. The Anderson's famed reputation, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew. This man, here you see Manny.
Years and years, the word Anderson was synonymous with world tag team champions. And now here we go. Using the arm. Oh!
Yeah, he said slam him on the arm. That's what Ole said, and that's exactly what he's going to do. Slam it right on that.
Down goes the Bull again, David. Still working on that arm, but I mean, Arn Anderson has been on that arm. Only it seems like he's responding.
Whipped him across. Into the left. He's trying to catch him. Clothesline.
Oh, close,
Manny.
David.
But he did it with the bad arm. What can he do? Stop. Another shot by Manny Fernandez. Manny's ready.
David Ole's almost at ringside. He's up to the top of this match.
He caught him with that upper chop of his.
There you see Ole Anderson. He's right up at ringside. A double thrust from the Bull, David.
Goes down for the pin. Wait.
Now Ole Anderson showing Tommy Young that the feet were across the road, David.
Arn Anderson kicked him out of the ring. Oh, no! Manny's going in golly.
What's the deal?
Stop. Defense, start pounding away. On Manny Fernandez. Arn Anderson, Ole Anderson. Double teaming on Manny Fernandez. Wait a minute. This is the Ole of old.
Oh, they're down on the concrete floor, right across the knee of Ole Anderson.
Going on?
Both men stomping away.
Manny doesn't have a chance.
Not at all. It's 2-on-1 here at ringside. Arn and Ole Anderson. Oh, my goodness.
Right.
And now, Thunderbolt Patterson.
Wait a minute. Hey.
Thunderbolt Patterson is in there. Let's go down to the ring with David. Come on. Leave it. You change the hard work. Oh, come on. Hey. Oh, my goodness. They have Thunderbolt in the ring.
There you see Ole. He's pounding away on him. Thunderbolt Patterson now. Taking hard right to left. Got Arn Anderson. Hey, watch this. There we go again. Arn Anderson and Ole Anderson. Start to pound away on Thunderbolt Patterson. Manny Fernandez down on the floor. Wait, watch, he says positioning. Oh, he's up on that second rope. He's stretched up. Come on out. Drops it. Foot right across. Now they, again, start to pound away on Thunderbolt. They drag him over. They get ready again. Position. Ole now. Going up. He's up on the top rope. He's up on the top rope. Manny Fernandez goes right in and positions himself to Ole Anderson. The Raging Bull. All the men down on that mat. All right, let's go. Let's go to Tony. Let's go to Tony and see if we can get this ring cleared.
And it's also worth mentioning that this is the match that started the fire of Jim Crockett Promotions. I mean, Jim Crockett Promotions was already a place that guys wanted to work. I mean, it already had a reputation as, you know, one of the hotter territories to be a part of, and good paydays and good scheduling and good creative. Dusty Rhodes is there and Ric Flair is there. But now that, you know, Hulkamania has really taken hold in America, it's starting to feel like the territories are becoming, I don't know, a thing of the past, because this new rock and wrestling thing has taken on a life of its own. WrestleMania is here. And on the heels of that, Jim Crockett Promotions finds themselves with one of, if not the biggest television opportunity in all of wrestling with this WTBS feed. And man, you want to talk about timing. You're coming right into the promotion right as they're going national, for lack of a better word. Your timing could not have been any better.
I feel like you're 100% right, because there was a group of talent, and I wish I had the exact dates in front of me, but I can remember the guys. Now, Jim Crockett, all those things that you mentioned had been in the past a very successful company. It had went through a dip around this time in business. Business was down a little bit because it was a rejuvenating as far as the guys they were bringing in. Dusty had taken over the book, and he was starting to have flair, and the people that he was finding and the people that Dusty wanted to bring in. It felt like, to me, you could just tell that there was a line drawn in the sand between the WWF and Jim Crockett Promotions. And by Jim Crockett acquiring that television, it felt like, okay, we're fixing to go to war. And now, like I said, I wished I had the exact dates, but you're talking about all of a sudden you had the Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll Express, Arn Anderson, Buddy Landale, the Garvins came aboard during that period. And you had, and I'm sure I'm missing some guys, but you had a pretty good chunk of talent in a couple of month period go to work for Jim Crockett, and you could just feel it and sense it, and it was new blood, and you just knew things were lining up and fixing to get interesting.
How about this? Manny Fernandez is going to defeat Arn Anderson by DQ around the 7-minute and 15-second mark, when Ole Anderson helps Arn double team Fernandez on the floor. During the bout, Ole, who joined the commentary team for the bout, said he and Arn were brothers, though the story at the time was they're cousins. Anyway, after the contest, Thunderbolt Patterson came out to question Ole about his tactics, with Arn jumping Thunderbolt from behind. Moments later, Thunderbolt gained the upper hand on Arn until Ole helped Arn double team him. Arn then held Thunderbolt down with Ole coming off the top. And as Ole tried it a second time, Fernandez climbed back in the ring to take the blow. Man, we're off to the races. So to just sort of add context to this, you've been working a program with Manny Fernandez, but your cousin or brother or whatever he is, Ole Anderson, is now in support of you when Thunderbolt Patterson comes down. And a lot of our younger listeners may not know the history of Thunderbolt and Ole. Catch them up as to why that was significant.
Well, they had went back and forth for years. You know, Thunderbolt was a big baby face in the Atlanta area. And, you know, Ole was a huge heel in the Atlanta area. And, you know, they had been back and forth. Now, the storyline of this time was Ole had been made aware that I was doing well, you know, and Anderson was doing well. And he had commented on it for a couple of weeks. And, you know, he had watched a match, I think, or something. And they had asked, you know, how do you feel about that? And he had finally started to tip in, you know, towards my favor. And, hey, well, the kid looks pretty good, you know, and you could just tell he was getting a little more interested. But in Georgia, still at that time, Ole had a good relationship with Thunderbolt. And when this thing went down, Ole made his decision. Hey, is it going to be Thunderbolt or me? And it was pretty clear that he chose me. And that was the only spark that they needed. And we were doing the wrong thing where Manny was concerned. And out came Thunderbolt and questioned it. And that was all the spark Ole needed to go back to where his roots were, you know, be an asshole, be an Anderson, and all that implies.
Well, I think also too, along the way back when they were even tag champs together, you know, Thunderbolt and Ole, I think they were NWA national tag champs, and now it's come to a head. Man, this is classic stuff. Later that night, of course, because the TV tapings were always an early matinee show. You're in Cincinnati, Ohio. You're working with Rocky Kernoodle, who, man, the whole Kernoodle family are in our thoughts and prayers with everything that's happened this year. A couple of days later, you're back in Greenville at the Memorial Auditorium, this time working with Rocky King. You find yourself on April 10th taking on Manny Fernandez back at the Dorton Arena. It's a double shot kind of day, though, because you're also in Pittsburgh working with Sam Houston. And Sam Houston in 85 is he's still a little wet behind the ears, shall we say, but he's coming into his own. Fans are with him. He's a typical white meat baby face. The girls are all about him. And it felt like a year later, he was going to be poised for a big, big push, but eventually he marries Baby Doll and has a run with the WWF. And I think a lot of people look at Sam Houston now in hindsight and say, man, what could have been? What say you?
Yeah, I mean, Sam was, to deny that he was a very good babyface and he sold well and had a lot of babyface skills. And you just look at him and he looked young in the face because he was young. And in those days when you had guys like that and you had, you know, the Brad Armstrongs and the Tim Horners and all those guys working those underneath spots, but were very, very talented, you know, you could give those guys a win or two on TV and, man, they were golden. They were set. And it always made for a good opponent on television. And when those guys would upset like a middle of the card guy, they went from being an underneath guy to a middle guy, just like that. Click, boom. And Sam was one of those guys. He was, you know, he sold really well, and he pulled the audience into the fact that, hey, this guy's getting his ass kicked. We might want to cheer for him or this is going to be over pretty quick. And that was, you know, pretty much the mentality of young baby faces. They should make the audience want to cheer to assist them in what was going on because they're getting their ass handed to them.
Let's talk about your next bout here. Stafford Senior High School. That's real. Fredericksburg, Virginia, April 11th. You and Manny are going to go to a double count out. You're going to be at the Scope in Norfolk on the next day, the 12th. You're going to fight Manny Fernandez to a no contest. You're working with Manny a lot. I'm sure you're getting somewhat of a routine together. Who was typically calling the matches? Did you have different styles of matches that you would do? I mean, we've heard sometimes where I think Jim Ross a few weeks ago on Grilling JR heard Terry Funk and Harley Race talking, and he said something like, hey, are we going to do the St. Louis finish or the Florida finish? And then we've even heard on some of the ladder matches that would happen on house shows where guys would say things like, hey, are they getting the A match, the B match, or the C match? Did you have some sort of a formula that you and Manny would rely on to put together your matches when you're working so often?
I don't think we were that advanced, and it worked enough to actually have an A, B, or C match. But after you've worked with a guy, you know, back in those days, 10, 12, 15 times, and a lot of those were days in a row, you know, you would just have a little bit of a routine down to the point that if I grabbed you in a headlock and I said, hey, drop down twice, backhand, you know, 7, 8, 9 weeks after about that 9th week, when I grabbed that headlock, you knew what we were doing because of where it was in the match. You knew it was, I didn't have to call the whole thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, we were just in a spot that, you know, maybe I had grabbed an arm to start off and he reversed it and I reversed it back and took him down by the hair and he nipped up and gave me a big chop. Maybe that was the lean in spot to that next bigger spot. So if we did that, he knew without me saying a word where we were in the match, and we just continued on with our routine. Now, a lot of times something would happen. Maybe they wouldn't react to the backhand, or they would really react to the backhand, and just on the fly, you would just switch it up because you got a different reaction for what you were shooting for or expected. It was still, Conrad, it's always been that when the business is at its best, it's in an ad-lib situation where you're really just going out there and rocking back and forth and fighting, and whatever a guy gives you, you take advantage of it, and vice versa. And that's when the business was really the best. You know, there wasn't an ongoing conversation ever in any match that I was in, because it just, if you're talking that much, then you're not really listening to the audience, and that's the key.
Well, things are really heating up here in April, because not only do we have a hot issue with you and Manny, but now Thunderbolt and Ole, who again are the NWA National Tag Team Champions. They won those belts back in January of '85. But now here we've just seen Arn in a little bit of a situation with Thunderbolt, and Ole has to decide, am I going to bail out my tag team partner, or am I going to bail out my blood? And he goes with his blood. And we continue that story when we do a television taping. The worldwide show on April 13th of '85 is going to have an opening segment where you've got like a dozen wrestlers come out and try to pull apart Arn and Manny Fernandez as they're brawling in the ring. And then eventually we see David Crockett reviewing footage from a recent interview that was done between the tag champs, Ole and Thunderbolt. And they're talking about Arn's actions. And Ole's going to complain that he was tired of carrying the likes of Patterson and Tommy Rich, and told Patterson to watch out the next time he saw him. And it comes to a head.
Okay, we're joined at ringside by Thunderbolt Patterson.
Well, you know, I don't have very much to say. It's just, you know, you got to change your heart, it seems like, you know. I know this is, blood is a little deeper than water and everything, and Ken is run kind of deep and all, but, you know, it was a time when you didn't go for, you know, rough tactics like that, and just because he's your kin, you can't uphold what he's doing.
What about that?
I can understand him being a great wrestler.
You know, I've had some time to think. And you ought to know probably as well as anybody the things that have happened to me in my life in the past, what, year, 6 months, whatever it is. And I think you know that I've done what I could do. But frankly, I finally realized maybe it doesn't do any good. Maybe it's a waste of time. I look at that kid, and you're right, I see an Anderson. I see what it can be. I don't see what somebody else wants me to make it. I see what it can be for me. I can see what it might do for that kid. And if you really stop and think about it, Bolt, if you give it some time and reflect on it, you're looking at me right now. I feel like I'm going back in time.
Well, maybe that's what we ought to do. Maybe that's what we got to do. Maybe that's what it has to be. Maybe it's got to go back in time. Because if I look at it honestly, I look at you and I look at Tommy Rich and I look at, Dusty Rhodes. I look at this Magnum TA and I realize all of a sudden, like a light, when I see this kid, all of a sudden I realize, you know what, Ole, you've been a kind of a dummy. You know why? No, wait a minute. You know why? Because, Bolt, frankly, I've been carrying you. I've been carrying Tommy Rich. I've been carrying Dusty Rhodes. I've been carrying all of you. I've been carrying you. I can squat with 700 pounds and all of you together weigh a little bit more, and I'm just finally tired of it. You used to tell me how... don't shake your head.
I mean, the people told me. The people said, hey, look, there isn't anything changing. I mean, this is just the trinkets before you know, this goes way back. Way back. I mean, are you going to be a liar?
No, I don't call it a liar. I realize I just wake up. No, wait a minute. Let me say something. They talk about, get that camera, and you say you look in a person's eyes and you can tell whether they're giving you any garbage, BSing you, so they call it.
Yeah.
You take a look, and you're going to see in my eyes, you're going to see the truth. I'm going to just tell you right now, oh, don't worry, I'm not going to touch you. Not yet. I'm going to tell you this. Today is a free day. Today is the day that you and I look at each other and I admit, nice guy that you were, whatever. But I helped you. You can't deny it. The days are over. I'm leaving. Next time I see you, I would suggest maybe you watch out.
As you can imagine, and we're going to get there on today's show, but Arn winds up wrestling Ron Rossi, and he actually gets the win by submission with an arm bar in 2 minutes and 25 seconds. But after the match, Arn, you damn dirty, nasty heel, you refuse to break the hold and continue to assault Rossi until Fernandez makes the save and clears the ring. And of course, you jump him from behind, knock him to the floor, ram him into the ring post, and continue the attack. Eventually, Jimmy Valiant and Pez Whatley run out and make the save. Man, you got to be pleased with your placement here. You know, Ole is wrestling royalty at this point. Thunderbolt Patterson is as well. And you're in there rubbing elbows with them in featured spots, opening the show, closing the show, and all in between.
100%. You know, you're in the mix with those guys. You know that you're going to be featured. You know, you're going to have interview time. You're going to have match time. And it just, I mean, it's when you're a player in a soap opera, which I don't think our business is a soap opera, but it is, but it's not, but it is, but it's not. It is certainly a saga, you know, that is nice to have a good storyline to follow. And when guys are reacting to things that you do, and then you react to what they do, and it's a week long, just piece by piece by piece, a small piece at a time, and it makes it easy to follow, and it's easy for the audience to get caught up in it. And, you know, Ole making that decision, you know, to be my partner and pretty much turn heel on the show that he had been a babyface for some time because he wasn't really wrestling that much. He was part-time announcer, part-time figurehead, part-time wrestler, all those things. It was a pretty strong statement, and to endorse me as his partner was even stronger for me. I can't tell you, you know, Ole Anderson had a lot of prestige in the business. He really did. And he carried a lot of weight. And when he said he would like to be your partner, it meant something.
Again, process that, boys and girls. The very first time Jim Crockett has control of this time slot, they book Ole and Arn in this hot angle, and we continue it a week later, April 13th, 1985, the WTBS show. We see Shivani interview Ole and Arn talking about Manny and Thunderbolt, and then Ole and Arn are going to tag up to get a win over Gene Ligon and Rocket King. Later that night, you're going to have 3,464 fans at the Greensboro Coliseum. Manny Fernandez will pick up a win over Arn there. On the 14th, the very next day, we're doing a no DQ match in Asheville with Manny Fernandez. And that night, Georgia Championship Wrestling is running the Omni. And what do you know? Manny Fernandez and the national tag team champion Thunderbolt Patterson are going to take on Arn Anderson and the national tag team champion, Ole Anderson. That goes to a DQ, but of course, Ole is still heavily involved in all things Georgia Championship Wrestling. He's got points in the promotion, et cetera, et cetera. Chat me up. What do you remember about working the Omni in this hot angle with your brother/cousin against Thunderbolt and Manny?
So let me get this right. The tag belts were split and one member was on each team of this.
You got it.
That alone, as a wrestling fan, piques my interest a little bit, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And it didn't occur that many times, and to have those championships, one on Thunderbolt, one on Ole, but Ole was on my team and he was on Manny's. It just made for, okay, which is he going to make the more important? And it was just an interesting dynamic that you didn't see very often. The Omni was one of those places that Thunderbolt, that would be like he would have been the home team there, I would think, because he lived there for years and years and years. He popped in and out on that television. Generations at that point had followed him. So Manny was the new hot kid on the block. He was the guy that, he would fight you, and he made it interesting. It was good chemistry for him to be fighting the Andersons. It was similar styles. He didn't mind roughing it up. So the Omni, was the place. And it was the Madison Square Garden of the South. So the tone was set, the situation was set, the drama was set, and it just made for a good dynamic.
A great dynamic, and it's in the Omni. I mean, that's like, as a fan growing up, that's like your Madison Square Garden, and the hits keep coming. The next day, you're in Altoona, Pennsylvania, probably one of the first times you've wrestled up there. Manny Fernandez and yourself are in the main event for Jim Crockett. It is, shall we say, a B show. You've got DJ defeating Red Walsh, Johnny Weaver defeating LP, DJ defeating Yukon Bob, Crusher Khrushchev defeating Jimmy Jackson, and finally, in the main event, Manny Fernandez and Arn Anderson. Woof.
Why are you giggling?
Well, it just tickles me because here's the thing. The next day you're at the Agricultural Hall in Allentown, Pennsylvania. It's a 4-match show. Sam Houston versus RPM number 1, Pez Watley versus RPM number 2, Tommy Rich versus Crusher Khrushchev, and then you again with Manny in the main events. You're back in Dorton Arena the following day, this time teaming with Tully Blanchard to take on Manny Fernandez and Buzz Tyler. Of the two, again, this is early 85. You're eventually at the end of this month going to get a tag strap with Ole, but seeing you tag with Tully early here, sort of pre-Horseman, if you will, could you already tell there was great chemistry there?
I'm not sure if there was any, because that was such a random booking. If you really think about that, that would have been just something that, I'd had a few weeks of TV now, but not many. Tully was top heel, in the company at that time. He had already made his mark, and along with the Russians, he was positioned up there. I can only imagine that this was going to be a test just to see how the audience bought it. And to be honest with you, I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember the match itself or the content or what went into it. But if I was a guessing man, we hadn't been in the ring together ever before as partners or otherwise. It probably, when you broke it down and looked at it, it was one of those things that I always say is a mistake. The only mistake you can make, or the biggest mistake you can make in a tag match, is to have 2 singles matches going on during a tag match. And I bet you anything that's what happened that night, just for lack of planning, and the fact that we weren't the team, and the fact that we were just thrown together. And I guess we were probably just having 2 single matches during a tag match, and that's a mistake. But you learn through, time and effort and water under the bridge what's the right thing to do. You go back and look at your career early on and you see a lot of mistakes. Now, I'm not saying we might have tagged in and out and looked like a well-oiled machine that night. Love to hear from somebody who was there that night in a fan role to refresh my memory and let me know what they saw, because I can't remember it. It just seems like because I was not at his level, his being Tully. It's would be nice to hear what went on that night, because I can't remember.
The next day, you're in Columbia, South Carolina, in singles action, working with Manny Fernandez. You get a rare day off, and then it's time to go to Atlanta. It's time to do TV. You're going to have an interview, or Shivani is going to interview, rather, Manny and the national tag team champion, Thunderbolt Patterson. And they're both going to dare you and Ole to come and take Thunderbolt's half of the titles. And they even do a second interview where they claim they would settle the issue over these titles with the Andersons.
We are back at ringside on World Championship Wrestling. On my left, the Raging Bull, Manny Fernandez. On my right, a man still with one half of the national tag team title, Thunderbolt Patterson.
Hey, you know, this is what it's all about. I have reached out for someone's hand. This man here put his body on the line to keep Ole Anderson from crippling me.
Right.
So, look, this belt here means two people. Ole Anderson, he walked off from me. I didn't do a thing to him. Just because his cousin or his nephew or whatever blood it is wants to wrestle, Ole has an attitude. So this belt here, and this is the man here that's going to be with me.
I got the attitude of judgment, Daddy. You talk about the national tag team titles. So every time we go out, we got to settle this situation someplace, somewhere, somehow. So every time you come out, Ole Anderson and Arn Anderson, you want a piece of something, here it is, Daddy, because me and the Bolt come together, B&B Incorporated, and this is what you got to get, the national tag team title. And I guarantee you one thing, Ole Anderson and Arn Anderson, it ain't walking distance, Daddy. It's stepping out and come and get it, because at full-out rock and roll, ain't nobody does it better than Bull and the Bolt. So when you come and get it, Daddy, you better come prepared for something whipping, Daddy. And like my man says, woo, it's going to be bad, because nobody is going to take this away from me and Bo. We own one half. And if you want it, you got to come and get it, baby. And if you got it, come and get it, because the Bolt and the Bull are going to be dealing with this situation. And here it is, baby. Come and get it if you can, because we're out here telling you your face. We're here.
Ringside with Thunderbolt Patterson and the Raging Bull, Manny Fernandez, the Russians. I guess all three of them got on Dusty, but good to see you two men come in and help him out.
You know, it takes a lot of things in the world to bring situations like this together. And the situation came together with the Bolt man and the Bull when Arn Anderson and Ole Anderson, Daddy, we should call him, and the little boy, Arnie, decided to take it upon themselves to deal out some punishment, call themselves the pain doctors. Well, I'll tell you something now. The heat is on, Daddy, and nobody likes it hotter than me and Bolt. So I guarantee you one thing. You want to be part of a tag team championship, you got to win that belt that Bolt is holding. So anytime, anywhere, any place, whether it be your mama's backyard,
Talk to him.
we are going to get down and settle this situation, because me and the Bolt are a little sick of the pain doctors making a house call.
You know, people have tried to misuse and run over, but this is the super station. This is CROCKETT promotion, and this is a whole new day. Now, Ole Anderson, man, I rest many days for folks' hands, but you put your body on the line to keep from getting me messed up. Ole Anderson, a whole lot of people told me, said he was going to turn, and I tried but I'm full. That's all I want, is somebody to stand with me. CROCKETT promotion. This is the bubble. Oh, my God.
We'll have more right here on World Championship Wrestling. Don't go away.
And later on the show, you're going to have an opportunity to tag with your pal Ole, or brother or cousin or whatever he is, and pick up a win over Gerald Finley and George South when Arn forces South to submit to an arm bar. So this is the second time we've seen you win with an arm bar here. And I know that part of the Anderson lineage has always been, or heritage rather, has always been, we work a body part and we render it useless. And you guys were notorious for working on arms and shoulders and things like that. but this is a guy who's known for his gourd buster and his spine buster, but you're trying the arm bar here. Chat me up.
Well, the precursor to that always was I would tag Ole, have the guy's arm pulled straight out where he couldn't get out of the way, and Ole would come off the top with a big knee. Now he would hook the submission, or I would hook the submission depending on who was legal. But the setup was as much a part of that arm bar as anything else. We worked the arm, but you had that big knee coming off, catching him in the shoulder, driving him down, and then you would apply the arm bar. So there was a method to the madness, and it was something Ole brought to the table. He did a really good knee off of that second buckle. So that was as much the story as anything else, but it was kind of, in those days, you didn't see a lot of submissions, especially the same one, which an arm bar is pretty basic unless you put it on like an Anderson, and then it becomes a weapon.
I love that. It's basic unless it's on an Anderson, then it's a weapon. That should be a t-shirt. You're in Sumter, South Carolina at the Exhibition Center on the 21st, working with Danny Brown. Of course, you get the win there. The next day, you're back in Greenville working with Manny Fernandez. But what I want to talk about is the April 23rd episode of TV. Of course, we're trying to keep the train on the tracks here for Jim Crockett Promotions. This is the era where Dusty Rhodes does his cold-blooded sausage maker promo, which so many people have played in recent years. But on the show, you're picking up a win over Mark Fleming with a standing armbar, 3 minutes and 12 seconds. So we have established the armbars are a real move, and you're going to continue that when you go to Richmond, Virginia at the Coliseum on April 26th. It's a worldwide taping, and you're going to pick up a win there over Mark Fleming. And then before you know it, it's time to get down to business for these tag titles. But before we do, one more set of TVs, April 27th at the WTBS studios. You're in tag action here with Ole taking on the Italian Stallion and Gerald Finley. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about the Italian Stallion, but Lord knows Tony Schiavone has had a little fun at his expense. Any Italian Stallion stories you remember you can share with us?
Well, the Italian Stallion was a tough kid with a huge head, and that's coming from me, who has a pretty good melon on him. Little did we know at the time, which we learned later, in his spare time when he wasn't wrestling, because he was not booked all the time. He was still a guy trying to find his way in the business and become, part of a crew, which is kind of apropos. He's a leg breaker in his spare time. Collector / he's the kind of guy that if you borrowed money and you did not pay it back, then suddenly one night you would come in from work and be sitting at your kitchen table eating dinner with your family, and your door would get kicked down, and that would be the Italian Stallion there with his hand out saying, "Pay up." Were you aware of that?
I did know that.
That always makes for an interesting dynamic when I think back to where, okay, I've wrestled this guy a few times. How would I have felt about all of a sudden my front door crashing down and him standing behind? Barrett would have been a baby back then, very small. How would I feel about him standing there saying, "Pay up," which makes me very, very intuitive. The fact is, it put a whole different light on those matches that we had in the past and the ones we did going forward, because that guy is he's got a real rough edge that you don't see, and I never saw that side of him, thank God. But when we found out it existed and we tried to get him to talk about it like all good gangsters do, he would not discuss it, which made me think that it probably was a real thing. And just kind of let you know in those days, you never knew what a guy did when he wasn't at the office.
Well, there's always a story behind a story. April 27th, as we mentioned, you're going to be out here working with the Italian Stallion and Gerald Finley, but that's not your only showing on the show. Thunderbolt Patterson would defeat Randy Barber, and after the bout, Ole and Arn Anderson, who provide guest commentary for the bout, attack Patterson until Manny Fernandez comes out and helps clear the ring. Later that day, because again, this is a matinee TBS show, you're going to be wrestling Thunderbolt Patterson to a no contest in Columbus, Georgia. It's the first time that you've probably had a singles match with Thunderbolt before, certainly in a main event position in Georgia. You got any good Thunderbolt stories you remember about working matches with him? How was he as an in-ring competitor, a dance partner, if you will?
He was a dance partner that stayed on his feet.
Okay.
Most of the time. And me being the guy that I was trying to become and had become at this point, I was more of a bumping, feeding heel. I didn't mind doing all the work and creating, most of the excitement, as long as when it was time to get mine, I got mine. Thunderbolt was the kind of guy that was, like I said, around the Georgia area. He had been in and out of there for years and years and years and was well known. And that was fine for him to stand in the middle of the ring and bounce you around. But when it got time to get mine, he was a little reluctant. And, at the time I thought, well, this guy's being a little difficult here. I'll refuse to get ate up. I was far enough along in my knowledge, of the way the business is supposed to be and the way things should be and all that at the time I felt like this guy may be taking advantage of me. He has seen that I'm more than happy to accommodate him, but okay, now it's my time. And you couldn't get him off his feet. And as it turned out, the more I worked with him, the more I figured out he wasn't able. He was an old timer. He was already an old timer. He was injured. Bumping was not his thing because it could not be his thing. And then I started to look at it in a different light because Ole did just scoop him up and bump him and slam him a couple times without his consent or knowledge. And him getting back to his feet was such an ugly thing. It was probably popped into my mind, okay, he's not bumping because he can't. And I looked at it differently and I structured the match differently and I kept it shorter. And when it was time to get mine, I could just beat him up a little bit with him on his feet in a corner, something of that nature, where it didn't have to be bumped around, because suddenly it was, hey, have some respect for the veteran.
Yes.
And I started to look at it entirely different. It's different to not go along with the program because you're an asshole. It's another thing entirely to not go along with the program because you're not able. And that wasn't something you discussed or talked about, but fact was the guy was probably working because he needed to and had to. And it was my position then to look at it differently and handle it differently and make sure that I returned him to his locker room and family and the same health that he had entered.
So let's talk about your next match with him, because it is a tag match and it's what fans have been wanting to see. It's a matinee show in Asheville, North Carolina on the 28th. It's Arn and Ole against Manny and Thunderbolt, but the real magic happens that night. Charlotte, North Carolina at the Coliseum, April 28th, 1985. Ole and Arn are going to team up to take on Thunderbolt Patterson and Manny Fernandez. And the stipulations were, if Ole's team wins, then Arn is going to win Thunderbolt's half of the national tag straps. And of course, if Thunderbolt's team wins, then Manny Fernandez is going to win the belt. And when it's all said and done, man, you hadn't been here very long, And now you are a Mid-Atlantic NWA National Tag Team Champion with your brother, cousin, whatever, Ole Anderson. It's a big night, man. Charlotte, North Carolina, and you're the tag champ.
Or was it ever? Huge. It was huge. The story played out. Just being partners with Ole was one thing. Now becoming champions, tag champions with Ole was even bigger. Having it happen in Charlotte just threw fuel on the fire. It was one of those things that you knew once it came together and it went down, and the fans were not happy about it. That's for sure. We were not baby faces. We were respected, not liked. Very few people liked us. There was a few hard asses in the crowd that knew what it meant for the Andersons to be champions again and how hard it was going to be to change the complexion of that by any team out there. I think they just felt it. They knew it was something they could, sink their teeth into. So it wasn't the ending of the angle. It was actually the beginning.
It's pretty important moment. You've talked about the first time that you won a tag strap, and it was an old territory belt back in the day, but this is another thing. I mean, this is the NWA National Tag Belt, and your partner is wrestling royalty, Ole Anderson. Is this something that as a fan, you're sort of like, wow, I can't believe this is real? I mean, tell me about your celebration or just how you internalize such a big moment.
If it doesn't feel real to you and you don't conduct yourself bell to bell and coming through the curtain from the time you go back through the curtain, if you don't feel it like a real thing, because it is a real thing, yeah, could I slam a guy harder if I wanted to? Sure. Could I punch a guy in the chin harder? Absolutely. The part of our business is, you're not trying to cripple a guy every time you go to the ring. You're just not. But, it's a very physical business. Guys get hurt all the time. You don't hear about it. It's not announced. Most times they just disappear for a while, and, you'd start to wonder, okay, well, shit, I haven't seen that guy in 3 or 4 weeks. Wonder what happened. And you would get back to work as quickly as you can because you didn't want to lose your spot. But when something like becoming one half of the national tag champions with Ole Anderson occurs in your life, it's something special. And that if you handle that position right, and you hope that you do all the right things and it gets over properly, then, people will be talking about you years down the road. I didn't know it was possible to be 30 plus years down the road, they would still be talking about you, but I knew it was a big deal. So it was like the beginning of, even though I'd held the tag titles, like you were talking about in Pensacola with Jerry Stubbs, this was kind of the beginning of becoming a national and a worldwide commodity.
You got to get excited about saving people all those dollars. They can limousine ride and jet fly now with that extra cash.
And they can style and profile with a quick 10-minute phone call right now to 425-0105.
That's 425-0105. Woo!
SaveWithConrad.com.
Star, if you want to call it that. But you went to a different level because we had a television show that went, national as a platform. The name Anderson was its own platform. And the fact that I was the new kid on the block to freshen it all up, man, it just made for incredible times.
The very next day, you're in Greenville, South Carolina. And again, it's a rematch. This time, Manny and Thunderbolt are challenging the tag champs, Ole and Arn, but it's a DQ win. So the belts do not change hands. It's second from the top with Dusty and Tully on top for the television championship. The next day, you're way up the road to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Again, second from the top with Tully and Dusty working on top for the TV title in a cage match. Manny and Thunderbolt are going to get the win, but once again, it's a DQ, so the titles don't change hands. And that rounds up your May of 1985. You know, you haven't been here in Mid-Atlantic a ton of time. You've been here for March and April. And in those 2 months, you're going to help kick off the show for the first time we have a national program. And then what? 3 weeks later, you're winning tag belts with Ole Anderson. Man, this is working out to be one of the best decisions you've made in your career just yet, is it not?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy about the fact that I didn't go back to Pensacola when I first wanted to. A couple of weeks in, we discussed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, things were happening for me. And in that position, in those days, if you were part of the tag champions and you were a heel, you were a workhorse. And you were put in the position of now, as long as you did not drop a fall, as long as you weren't submitted or pinned 1, 2, 3, as long as you weren't beat in the middle of the ring, you remain champion. You could get DQ'd, you could get counted out. And if you rolled out of that ring when it was all said and done, still the champions, there was a lot of heat on those days, because everybody knew all you were trying to do. Now, you never had to win. You just had to survive a match. And in those days, that translated to heat. And they were bouncing us around. As you could look at the travel schedule, we were going to all the major cities. We had been put in a different position as far as where we were on the card. We were next to last. And that was a fantastic position. It was a prominent position. And, you know, we were on the way. And it was not lost on me that I had been put in a position of trust. And every night I went to the ring, I wanted to make the company glad that they had trusted me with that position.
We got a lot to talk about next week when we pick up where we left off here. Of course, we're going to be talking about May of 1985. And man, it feels like we're just getting started with this whole Thunderbolt business. But along the way, we're even going to talk about working with Abdullah the Butcher, which is a real thing. We'll also have some commentary on working with George South, Bob Roop, and a whole host of others. But man, now that we're talking about the Mid-Atlantic days and working with Jim Crockett Promotions, this is probably the stuff that even to this day, fans talk to you about the most, right?
Quite a bit. You know, our fans, Conrad, from what I can deduce and listening, you know, are really enjoying us going back and revisiting,
yes,
you know, these things. Because I think we have an older audience. We have a 40-ish, you know, I would say from 30 to 60. We have a lot of fans that things were going on in their life when all this was occurring, and this was one of their favorite pastimes. And, you know, they can tell you the stories because we did just give you a piece on television every week, and then we would give you another piece and another piece, and that's all you had to digest for that week, and the story that was being told. And I think it was very easy for the fans to remember those stories. And if you missed a week of TV, you could catch up the next week, because the company and the business did a pretty good job of going back. Hey, if you missed it last week, here's what happened. Let us remind you. And that was always important, because everybody didn't see every show every night. Shows weren't being taped, you know, like they are now. It was a different time. So yeah, I mean, it was awesome. It really was, because you knew where you were in the story, and it made it easier having to go when you went back to those towns weekly, bi-weekly, maybe every 3 weeks. It helped knowing where you were in your storyline. That's for sure.
I think next week I'm going to try to find some old interviews, because this is really an era where Ole starts cooking with gas on a national stage. And you're standing right by him as he's just running down the list of who's on the hit list, and that Thunderbolt Patterson is at the top of that list. And I think Ole in one of these promos even starts naming all the folks who've fallen victim to the Andersons over the years, whether it's Andre the Giant, Bruno Sammartino, Wahoo McDaniel, Bill Watts. And man, saying that on TV in 85, them's fighting words. We'll talk about that and much more, including one of my absolute favorites. I've just rediscovered him for the very first time, Mr. Pistol Pez Watley. We're going to be breaking down May of 85 next week. By the way, you can get all these shows early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com. And there's lots of cool little bonus stuff. Arn, I think you've got to Ask Arn Anything that's coming up this month. And fans are digging all the extra bonus content we're doing over at adfreeshows.com.
Well, we're glad to do it for them. Those folks are some of our most loyal. You know, they're really enjoying the ad-free concept. And, you know, some of the stuff we don't get to talk about because there's not enough time, we get to address. And Lauren is fantastic. I think she's going to be our host, right?
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. Lauren and Paulie do a tremendous job over there. And
yes, they do.
It feels like we've created a community within a community, and we hope you guys would consider it. Starts at just $9 a month. You get all these shows early and ad-free. Tons of other bonus content if you're into that sort of thing. But before you know it, Top Guy Weekend will be here, and man, we're all going to have a great time there on AEW's big weekend for All Out. We're going to be at the Hyatt Regency in Schaumburg, Illinois. And if you're a member on ad-free shows, we hope to see you there. We've got some big surprises in store, don't we, Arn?
Brother, you've always got surprises. That's what I like about you. And yes, we do. It's going to be, you know, special weekend. We're going to be there, you know, pretty much all week.
Yeah.
Shooting a lot of shows, a lot of content, a lot of interaction with the fans. And it's a thank you for supporting us. We've said many times, Chicago in that area is as good, if not the best, for supporting wrestling in the world. And they're certainly up there with anybody. So we're coming back. We look forward to doing a lot of cool things and look forward to you being there that week.
And if you haven't already, be sure to catch Arn every Wednesday on AEW. Fans are back. It's making for a much more enjoyable show. And I can't wait to see what's next after you took a errant kick to the head. I hope there's some receipts coming around. I'll be tuned into TNT. Can't wait to see what's next.
Oh, well, you know, there's people out there that know me and know who I was and know who I am. And it does make a little interesting food for thought. They certainly don't think, that gentleman certainly don't think I'm just going to sit back and go, oh, that's okay, kick my head off. It happens.
Yeah. So stay tuned. Spine buster. I smell it in the distance, and you can too if you're smelling what we're cooking. We'll see you next week right here for another edition of your favorite territory wrestling podcast. It's Arn.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.